hot cola. Hot cola. Good morning. Today is Beis Iyar, which is the birthday of the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Rebbe Maharash had a motto, a saying that the Rebbe spoke about a lot, and that went as follows: "The Welt sagt," the world says, meaning people say, the general attitude is, "As mekenisht arunter geht men ariber." If you can't get by with going under, go over. Which means, if a person is faced with some kind of challenge, some kind of obstacle, he's trying to get around it. If you have no choice, just take the high road and go full force, rely on Hashem to help you, and think larger, and you'll get through it. But I say, said the Rebbe Maharash, you should go in the first place higher, over. Don't see the problem as something that's holding you back, but take an approach that you could really knock this thing out of the park. Very often when a person has the right attitude towards a obstacle or a challenge, it changes everything, because his approach is, I could get through this, I could do this, as opposed to it's an issue, and as a last resort, we really have no choice, we're going to forge ahead. So today is his day. It's the Rebbe Maharash's birthday, and it's gives us special energies to behave in the same attitude in our lives of lichatchila ariber, which means in the first place, take that attitude of expansiveness, of broadness, not seeing a problem as something which is going to hold you back, but rather a speed bump as opposed to a restricting factor. Today we're going to continue our learning on Pirkei Avos, which is ethics of our fathers. As I mentioned, the custom is from Pesach until Shavuos, which is 6 Shabbosim. And in Chabad community, our custom is we do it all the way to Rosh Hashanah, which is all summer. Every Shabbos, we learn another chapter of ethics of our fathers. Now, the reason why we learn Pirkei Avos is because in the summer, people tend to be a little bit more relaxed. It's probably a good thing. And our routine changes. And schedules get, let's say school is out and people are vacationing more. And because the weather is warm, they're outside more. Things are different. It's not so intense. And unfortunately, at times, a person could forget about some of the values, some of the principles, some of the appropriate ways to behave in thought, in speech, and in action. And as a result, our sages said, let's take this volume of Mishnah, which is 6 chapters, which speak about ethics, values, principles, teachings from our sages of how we should behave. Let's learn them. Let's remind ourselves about them. And of course, let's act on them to be better even in the summer months, even when the weather gets all warm and the attitude and the mood is different. So this Shabbos, we're going to learn the 2nd chapter. And I want to share a few Mishnahs from this chapter with some explanations. The chapter begins with a saying from Rabbi. Rabbi was Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. He was the one that authored the Mishnah. When I say authored, he compiled it, and I'll explain a little bit more how that worked. But first, let's see what he said. Rabbi says, Eze hiderech yeshara, what's the proper path that a person should choose for himself? What are the options? Kol shehitif eres lo'oiseha, any path which is honorable, which is beneficial for himself, for the person doing those activities, choosing those paths, and visif eres loy min ha'adam, and it's honorable and beneficial for other people, which means, as the topic of today's class is, trying to please others. Rabbi says, take an approach which is good for you and it's good for other people. Now, it doesn't seem like a very Jewish approach. It doesn't seem like a very Torah-driven approach. Since when are you concerned if it's popular to do the right thing? Since when do we care if people will say that what you did was the right decision? If it's right, if it's correct, if that's what Torah wants you to do, that's what you do. It seems that by saying or implying that make the choice in life, which is not just honorable for you, but it's also somewhat popular for people around you, it sounds like you're saying bend on your principles, God forbid, which is obviously not what he's saying. But we're going to explain that shortly. Then he went on and said another teaching. Rabbi continues and he says, "Have a zahir b'mitzvah kala kivachamura." Be very careful with things that seem to be an unimportant mitzvah, because you don't know which reward is given for small mitzvahs and which ones are given for larger ones. You don't know what's important for Hashem and what's not. You have some people, Yom Kippur, we're not going to miss that. But something small like visit the sick or put on tefillin or other things, which for whatever reason they decided they're small, they don't give it the same attention. So the Mishnah is stressing and teaching us, don't take that approach because you don't know what's important. What the human mind perceives or thinks, oh, that's a small one, that may be the greatest reward. That may be, not that we do it for reward, but that's indicative of how valuable and important it is in Hashem's book. So the Mishnah is stressing, don't make those decisions on your own because you don't know what's really considered to be special or important or big and what's small. Compare the expenses or loss of money that a mitzvah might cause to the reward. When a person is doing a mitzvah and he says, this is so difficult, it's taking so much time, it's such a commitment, I have to spend so many resources on it just to fulfill this mitzvah that Hashem wants, we should know, don't look at it as, oh, it's a loss, because the reward will be commensurate to the amount of effort that you put in. So don't discount it and say it's not worth it, or I feel bad. Don't look at it that way. Now, when it's particularly hard to do a mitzvah, the Yetzer Hara comes along, the evil inclination comes along and says, it's not such an important mitzvah. It's only a small one. Let it go. And the Mishnah is stressing to you, don't do that. Don't listen to your evil inclination saying it's just a small one. Why? Because when you have an attitude, the way Maimonides teaches us, the way the Rambam tells us, that our approach should be that the whole world is equal. Imagine the entire world is 50-50. God came down, Hashem came to judge the world, and he looks and he sees that half of the world is positive and half of it is negative, which means all the deeds going on in this world, we're not good and we're not bad. We're somewhere in the middle. There's a scale, metaphorically speaking. And this decision that I'm about to make in my personal life, privately, whether I'm going to do the right thing or the wrong thing, whatever it may be, the moment I make that decision, it's going to weigh the entire universe, the entire world, humanity, in that direction. So it may be, a small thing. Someone asked you for a favor, you did or you didn't do it. It's tiny, but it's that tiny drop which flips the scale in either direction, positive or negative. So in addition to you not knowing the reward of each mitzvah, you don't know the impact globally, cosmically, what's about to take place by the decision that you make. Everything has a ripple effect. And every move and everything that you do matters. The Rebbe takes this teaching even further, and he says that if you talk about Mashiach coming and us reaching finally an era of Geula, where the world reaches the state of perfection, holiness, Mashiach comes, and so on, your deed might be that last one, that decision that does it. So don't underestimate your power, and don't underestimate the value of even small acts. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, the author of this Mishnah, was also known as Rabbeinu HaKadosh. He was the son of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, which was the last Mishnah of the last chapter. Now, he was born, interestingly, on the day that the Romans killed Rabbi Akiva. Now, he lived in the time immediately following the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, and he was a Nasi, he was a leader for a long time. He's most famous for compiling the Mishnah. Now, compiling the Mishnah was a very big accomplishment, both in just practically or technically to put this all together. You have to gather all the sages, take all of their teachings, decide what goes into the book, what doesn't go into the book. There's a lot of things that have to be reconciled in order to do that. But a greater achievement than the technical difficulty in doing it was up until that point, we weren't allowed to record Torah Shebal Peh. Oral teachings, the oral part of Torah was forbidden to record. Many reasons for it, but I want to share one of them, that when something is recorded, well, minus this broadcast on YouTube and Facebook, but when something is recorded, which, by the way, those that are watching, you're welcome to ask questions. You could comment. Hello, Michael. Hello, Edgar. Hello, Barton. Hello, Mikkel. Hello, Russ. Hello, Ari. Hello, Freda. And there's a feed on YouTube as well. You can use the live chat. So what happens is like this. When you look at, when there's a teacher giving a class, and you know that I could always look this up later, your attention and your focus is different. They did a study on it. They took two different professors. One professor allowed the students to record the classes. You could have literally a small recorder, or today it would be your phone, and you can record what the teacher is saying. And the other professor, they didn't allow them to record. And they found that the class that was recording did much worse on their tests. Why? Because their attitude was, I don't have to pay attention, I'll listen to it later, which obviously they didn't. When you know that whichever sage it is that's speaking, explaining law to the Jewish people, if you know tomorrow you'll just go and look it up, by definition, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, your attention span changes and your focus is diminished. So that's one of the reasons, and there are more than one, but one of the reasons why oral law was never transcribed, because we wanted that focus, that listening, that learning. People should take it from the teacher when it's said, because yes, it'll be recorded in a library, but you may never go to it. Rabbeinu HaKadosh recognized that the era that he's living in, post-destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, and the Jewish people are getting dispersed, and we don't have that same structure of learning that we had, and not everyone has the same access to the scholars and the sages and the teachers that existed up until that point. We need to record this. People have to be able to take out the scroll. Today it's published, and learn it. Learn it with your study partner, learn it with your children, learn it with your friends. You could take the text and learn it. And thanks to his bold move of making that exception or change, we have the recordings transcribed of Mishnah in a very special and precise way. Now, after his father passed away, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi became the Nasi, became the leader afterwards. Now, he had a brother. His brother was a greater scholar than him, but the reason why he was appointed to be the leader of the Jewish people in his time over his brother is not because of his great scholarship, which was tremendous, but because he had fear of heaven, which means he was very focused and he was very, very careful. And just to clarify, both brothers were very careful and both brothers are very scholarly, but his greatness and why he was chosen is because of his dedication and his frumkeit, his status of fear of heaven, and so on. The Gemara tells us, the Talmud tells us in Masechta Tainis, Daf Hey, that, well, I think it's Daf Hey, that when Rebbe passed away, just before his passing, he told his family that Friday night, I want you to prepare for me, by my place, a place setting, with the challah, with the wine, the whole thing, and I'll come back for Kiddush. Now, he died. They buried him. And Friday night, he returned and he made Kiddush for his family. And this went on for some time until a neighbor noticed. And when the neighbor noticed and started to tell everyone else what she saw going on, it's amazing. He passed away and he comes back. It's not amazing that he passed, but it's amazing that he's coming back. And people started talking. Rebbe stopped coming back because he felt that people will start to talk and say, he's greater than other sages. So-and-so that we thought was this great tzaddik, we thought he was such a great person, he's not all that great because he's not coming back to his family after he passed away, and he is. So as a result, he stopped doing that. But it shows you the greatness of who Rabbi Akiva was. Who Rabbi was, thank you. Yeah. Now, I asked before, it sounds very not authentic when you say make a decision in life based on what's good for you and good for others, right? Since when are you going to hold back on what you think is correct because someone else doesn't find it popular? It's not honorable for the masses, right? We hope that the politicians are not making the decisions based on people following them, right? We want them to lead. When you make a decision in your life, don't do it because your neighbor is going to think it's nice. Do it because you think it's right. So the Rebbe gives a beautiful explanation on this, and he says that think about how it's viewed from another person. Not that we're trying to impress people with your actions. Do it because it's right. But when you're making a decision for yourself about your own life, you tend to be biased and to see it from your perspective. But if you could, for a moment, imagine that it wasn't you about your own life. You were advising someone else. Someone's looking at your situation and telling you what you should do. He wouldn't necessarily have the same perspective that you do. Try to be objective, is what he's saying. How is it viewed for other people from someone else's perspective? So it's not that you're trying to impress the other person. It's giving you a parameter how to make decisions in your life. Remember that it's you about yourself, and therefore you're thinking in a certain way. Try to step back and objectively make the decision of what's right. Now, an additional question is, the Mishnah says, what's the right way, right? What's the correct way? And the answer is the correct way is what's beneficial, honorable for you, for the person doing it, and what's beneficial and honorable for others. It's not, the question is a non-starter. Hello, Avram. The question is a non-starter because what we're saying is, as a Jew, as someone that learns Torah, Torah is the guiding light. Torah is your path. Torah is your teaching. So what do you mean, what's the right way to do it? Look in the Torah, see what's correct, and that's what you should do. Why is there optional choices here of what a person should do? So he says that when a servant or a child or an employee does something, if you didn't choose to do it, your level of enthusiasm is going to be much different. If you didn't choose to do a mitzvah, you're doing it because you have to, you have no choice, it's your duty, then your enthusiasm, your approach, your joy, your passion when you do it is limited. So the Mishnah is telling you that what's the correct path? One that's good for you and good for others. Feel that way, that when you do this mitzvah, don't take the approach that I have no choice. Hashem said I have to go to Shul and daven. I have no choice. I have to be honest. Do it with enthusiasm because it's the right thing to do. Feel as if you chose that decision on your own. Because while we have this relationship with Hashem, God said, I do, which is commitment, dedication, devotion. It's very important. At the same time, Chassidus teaches us that we have to have a chayis, an excitement, a vigor when we do it. So when the Mishnah says, what's the right way to choose? It means have that approach that you chose it. We're talking about not measuring mitzvahs and understanding that even a small mitzvah, you don't know the value of it, and therefore treat all mitzvahs equally. Or don't diminish or discount a smaller mitzvah. Say, it's not a biggie. There's an interesting story. There was a man who was once imprisoned. And after a while of being there, many months, several years, he turned to his captors and begged them to give him a day off. One day he wants to leave this imprisonment. And after begging and whatever types of negotiations, they said, okay, choose one day a year, you could go free. Just for that day. Which day do you choose? Your birthday? Yom Kippur? Your anniversary? Shabbos? What day should I choose if he has the opportunity to leave prison for one day? So he wrote a letter to a great sage of his time, to the Radvaz. And he asked the Radvaz, I have this opportunity to leave jail one day. To do Pesach maybe? Or Yom Kippur, I could daven with a minyan and shul. Maybe Rosh Hashanah Shofar is better. What are my choices? And what should I take? And the Radvaz told him, take the first available day. If they let you go tomorrow, go tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday, right? What's the big deal? What's Wednesday? Maybe save it for Yom Kippur. Save it for a shot. No. You think that Yom Kippur is greater than you putting on tefillin tomorrow or davening with a minyan or whatever. You don't have that liberty to make that decision. We don't know. You take the first available mitzvah. Just an example of a practical application of this Mishnah where you don't look at mitzvahs in a way of what's considered in your eyes to be smaller or bigger. Rabbi, who was a Nasi, a leader of his generation for a very long time, he's the one that says this Mishnah that you should look at your decision, what's good for you and what's honorable for others. And again, to clarify, we're not bending values because it's popular, but keep in mind what's good for other people, not just for yourself, as long as what you're doing is the right thing. The reason why he's doing it, says the Rabbi, why he's the one saying it, is because he was a Nasi, he was a leader. And a leader recognizes the importance of constantly making that decision. What do I want? But what about the other people? What's good for me? But what about the other people? And it's not just for a leader of a generation. Every person is a leader in some capacity. Whether you're a boss, a father, a mother, a spouse, you're in a relationship with somebody else, and you have this choice the whole time. I'm making a decision. It may be good for me. What about for someone else? It may be popular, but you have to try to find a way that it works for the person and for others. Or in English, don't be selfish in your decisions. Okay. The Mishnah continues and tells us, this is an interesting thing, because back in the day, if you try to imagine when this Mishnah was taught, compared to the technology that we have today, it's a little easier to understand how it works. The Mishnah gives us some advice. If you want to do the right thing, and if you want some help to make the right decisions in life, remember and reflect on the following three things. Consider these three things. You won't come to doing a sin. Number one, you should know what's on top of you. And here are the following three things. Number one, ayin raya, there's an eye that sees. Okay, Hashem is always watching you. V'oizen shemas, there's an ear that's listening to everything that you're saying. V'chomasecha b'sefer nechtavim, and all of your actions are being written in the book, which means they're recorded. And Hashem is keeping an eye and an ear and recording of what's going on. So today, with today's modern technology and cameras, and much more than cameras, really, you could appreciate what it means that your actions are recorded and someone could hear you at the other side of the world and someone's watching you and so on. But if we take this approach in life and we don't say, no one's watching, big deal, right? Then you make better decisions because you feel that Hashem is watching you. And it's not like it doesn't matter or who cares or I just got away with it because no one knows. If you have that approach, you'll always see it that way. Rabbi was a very humble person. The Tana, the sage of our Mishnah, extremely humble. Although he was a great Nasi, compiled the Mishnah, and tremendous influence, he was a very humble person. And he once had to write a letter to the emperor, Antoninus. So he asked one of his students to write the letter for him. A student or a colleague, Rabbi Afos. Rabbi Afos wrote this letter, and he wrote from Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, which means Rabbi Yehuda the leader, to His Majesty, the emperor. Rabbi saw it and he said, no, that's not how you write a letter. Write from your servant, Rabbi Yehuda, to his master, Antoninus. And he said, what do you mean? You're a leader of the Jewish people. Why are you writing that way? And he said, remember Yaakov and Esav? When Yaakov sent the messenger to his brother Esav, he said, I'm Yaakov, your servant, Esav, you're my master. It takes a level of humility to realize you're talking to a king and appreciate the protocol and don't get caught in haughtiness or wrong type of pride and so on. Now, it doesn't mean that he's walking around being stepped on by everybody, but when he's speaking to the emperor, with a message or a purpose for the greater community, he knows exactly how it's supposed to be done. The Mishnah uses an interesting term. Da ma l'mayla mimach. Know what's above, higher than you, right? The eye that hears, an eye that sees, an eye that hears, and all your things are recorded. But the word that's used, know what's above from you, in Hebrew, da ma l'mayla mimach. Mimach means from you, which could also be understood that everything that's going on above is from you. It's a result of you. You impact what's going on in the heavens. When a person is kind, when a person is merciful, it causes Hashem to behave in a kind and merciful manner. When a person is giving, Hashem becomes giving. When a person is happy, Hashem is happy. So when you do things, you should know that in heaven it's from you. It's a result. It's almost like a shadow from your behaviors, which obviously then in turn impact us. Lidei Avera, you won't come to do a sin. The words the Mishnah uses, lidei, in Hebrew means to the hands of, like a handle. Because the way the evil inclination works is, it doesn't come and tell a person, let's go do a sin. You're going to say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't believe in that. I think it's wrong. What he does is he gets you a little bit of a handle. He gets you a little bit, go in that direction. Don't do it, but think about it. Don't do it, talk about it. Consider it, reflect, look at it, whatever it may be. And he slowly gets the person to go from the handle to the door to get in. So the Mishnah uses the term lidei to remind us, look at those three things. Remember the eye, the ear, and that everything's being recorded. And you won't even come to the handle of Avera. You won't let the evil inclination slowly pull you into all of these type of things. There's a famous story about two people that were in a wagon together. One was the coachman, one was the passenger. And as they're traveling, he stops by a little field and he sees fruits. So he tells his passenger, you keep an eye. I'm going to climb over the fence and get some fruits. They look like they're ripe. If you see anyone watching, just shout. So the fellow coachman goes to the wall. He climbs up, and as he's about to get over to grab a fruit, the passenger screams, hey, someone's watching, someone's watching. So he jumps off, runs back, and he says, thank you. Okay, let me try again. And he goes back. And he goes to the wall. He tries to climb over. And as he gets there, he says, well, be careful, someone's watching. And again, he drums back. And after a couple of times, he says, I don't see anyone. Who's watching? He says, I don't see him either, but he's watching. Hashem is watching. So we learn about the idea of recognizing that someone's looking at us. We have to feel that way. Okay, it's a person has to recognize that and keep that in mind. The Rabbi Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, said the following teaching: Yafet Talmud Torah im derech eretz sheigia shnei mishkachas oven. It's very good to have learning Torah with working. When a person has that approach, he's not just stuck in his learning only, but also is dealing with the world. That's a very assured way that he ends up making the right decisions and not doing wrong things. What used to be in the prior generation, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, he didn't say this teaching because people were on a much higher level, and even if they spent their whole life learning, it was enough to keep them from any type of sin or mess up or making the wrong decisions. However, his son was living at a later time, and people were not as spiritually sensitive, and they weren't, let's just say, in the right place as far as the values go. And he said that you have to also work. You also have to have derech eretz. When you have that that focus, you'll have both. You'll be assured that you're not doing the wrong thing. It also gives a person the opportunity to find Hashem in the practical. If you're sitting and learning all day, you run the risk, and not diminishing learning, you have to learn the whole time. But you don't have the opportunity of going out into the world and seeing Hashem's hand in a very practical way. A person that's in business appreciates if he believes that there are no coincidences, appreciates that this was divine providence. The fact that I met so-and-so and I have that connection, or this person introduced me there, or I happened to be in the right place at the right time, or this sale went through, or this connection happened, is a reminder that Hashem is with you. It's a reminder that Hashem is running the world. And sometimes if you're locked in a room and studying all day, you don't have that opportunity to see that. You don't have the opportunity to experience it. Okay. There's another explanation. Any Torah which doesn't have melacha with it, doesn't have work with it, won't last. The Rebbe says melacha means work of teaching someone else. If you're just going to learn yourself, retain that information, and not share it, you'll forget it. Because it's a selfish type of learning. It's just for yourself. If you learn with others, you help, you try to bring it out, then you'll benefit from it. And more than that, teaching others and encouraging others to be involved in Torah and mitzvahs helps the person, because the Mishnah says that if you want Torah to really last, it's Torah and Derech Eretz together, doing both of them at the same time. The third Mishnah says as follows: Have zehirin barashos. You should be careful with government. Okay, they're probably listening, but you should be careful with government. Why? They only come to the person when it's beneficial for them. They're nice to the person for their own benefits. They look like they're your friend when it's beneficial for them. They're not standing by the person in the time of their need. Okay, sometimes certain people, certain types of government officials are your best friend when they need you. But be careful. Now, we're not implying that all politicians are corrupt. We're not saying that in any way. It's not true. What the Mishnah is saying is, don't forget that Hashem runs this world. Don't rely, if I know the right governor, if I know the mayor, if I know the alderman, everything will work out. Remember, there's Hashem. If you really want things to work out, improve in your learning, improve in your good deeds, strengthen your connection with Hashem. Okay, if it has to be done through a politician, it will be. But heavy zehirin barashos, especially in the olden days when there was so much more power to any type of official, a person could easily feel, if we're friends, then I'm fine. First of all, don't be so sure that they're your friend. They just needed you for something. Second of all, don't forget who really runs the world. Okay, it's something which a person. Let's look. We learned from Mordechai. The Rabbi tells us that Mordechai at Tzaddik, when the decree came out, what was the first thing he did? Achashverosh, the king, said he's going to destroy all Jewish people in one day, men, women, and children. Now, you go to Esther. Esther's the queen. That's the way to solve this. Mordechai also was a minister, and he had some connections. So, to put it lightly, he also saved the king when Bigsan and Saresh tried to poison him. So he has a lot of clout, if you will, and he could go and work on this. And that would be you would think that's the first thing you do. Mordechai didn't do that. First, he gathered all the children, and he studied with them, and he davened, and he did shuvah. And then he sent the messenger to Esther after she tried to ask what's going on. I hear you're in the streets crying. So he understood, Mordechai, that although I have political connections in high places, and I will use them, but step number one, the priority is the spiritual side of things. Because things in this world, as we said, da malamayla mimach, what's happening in heaven is from you. It's your result. So if you could strengthen your spirituality, if you could strengthen your learning and davening, it'll impact in practicality as well. There's a story about the Malbim, the great commentator, great tzaddik. He once had to travel to Paris to meet with a government official. It was a communal matter. He was living in Bucharest at the time, and he had to travel. So he figured, if I go to the mayor of my town, which I have a good relationship with him, and he writes a letter, the mayor of Bucharest is going to write a letter to this official, this governor in Paris, I'll be successful, whatever he was trying to achieve, the Malbim. So he gets a letter, it's sealed in an envelope, and he heads out. In the middle of the way, the Malbim thinks to himself, What kind of behavior is this? I'm relying on the mayor of Bucharest to get me in to the governor, that the governor is going to help me. I'm going to rely on Hashem. And he said, you know what? I feel that it's diminishing from my faith. I feel like I put too much emphasis on he's going to give me that connection. He ripped up the letter and threw it out. His student who was traveling with him was really curious. So he went to this letter, he pieced it together, and he saw not only did he not give him a good recommendation to the Malbim, but he actually said, send them away without anything. Just read the letter and send them out. And he realized that if you lose focus for a minute and you think, oh, it's my efforts, you're ruining things and not helping it. Okay? We have to do our part. We don't just rely. We have to have Torah and derech eretz. We have to put in our efforts, try, put in our ishtadlus, our trying, our efforts to make this work. But don't forget where it's really coming from. Okay? You could be a salesman and have all the great numbers and the leads and the skill, but if Hashem doesn't want that sale to close, it won't close. Remember that. We have to do both. In addition, in Hebrew, the word rashus, havizehirim barashus, be careful of government officials, doesn't just mean rashus as in government officials, it also means rishus, things that are permissible. Be careful from the things that are allowed. Don't be too indulgent. Don't say, if it's okay, so I'm going to be glutinous or I'm going to run my life based on pleasure-seeking kosher stuff that are allowed. Just be careful with it. Don't get too carried away because this type of behavior leads sometimes to things that are forbidden as well because the focus of a person changes and their priorities shift. So Zehirim Barashos means be also careful from things that are permissible. And in Hasidic teachings, we have a very big emphasis that maybe we shouldn't just do it because it's fun. We should do it because it's wholesome. We should do it because it's productive, right? Going on vacation is a great thing and you should do it. Don't do it for fun. Do it because it'll bring your family closer together, hopefully. Although many things happen on vacation, but it will bring your family closer together. It's something which allows you to refresh yourself. It allows you to come back after a change of scenery and restart. There are many, many benefits. So be careful of those things that are permissible to have the right focus. You want to eat? We've discussed this many times. We have a story about a great sage who he was teaching, and he left in middle and went for lunch. And when he came back, he said, now I understand what I didn't understand earlier in the morning. They had a question, he didn't have the answer. And he said, I just had for lunch very good meat and good wine, and somehow my mind opened up, and I had some clarity here. It's scientifically proven as well. But his approach when he went to eat lunch was, okay, let's have fun? No. I am trying to study. I'm trying to teach. I'm trying to understand. And I don't get it. Let me try to sit down, relax a little bit. I'll have a proper meal, and I'll be able to focus. So Zehirim Barashos means be careful, literally, from the government, but it also means be careful from the permissible things, because they're good for you, but they're dangerous. So do it with the right priority, with the right focus, with the right emphasis. Thank you all for joining. Again, those that are online, those that are in person, have a wonderful day.